Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is G. You're watching Allastrology. We're going to talk about Mercury. Mercury's up to her shenanigans. We've got Mercury going retrograde, going backwards, which means redos, do-overs, look at it again, read it again, consider it again, possibly finding you missed to dot an I or to cross a T. Just looking over your options again. So let's look at the details, Mercury, and see, when does the retrograde begin? What area of your life could it possibly be in? What could it mean? And when will we have like the all clear sign? Like when is the retrograde? Not only does the retrograde end, but when is Mercury literally out of its shadow zone? Right. Shadow zone meaning the location of the chart where it went backwards and then went forward again, right? We know that in astrology, we're not supposed to make, the guidance is to not make any important decisions until it's out of its shadow zone, which means it's out of its redo zone. It's out of its rerun area. Yeah, meaning it looked through all the paperwork. It went through all the files. It crossed all the I's. It dotted all the T's. It had those conversations again. And then it made a decision, because Mercury is about choices. Yeah, Mercury is the details. So you want details, you've got details, right? So here I am over here, going to draw my number 8 as usual. And the reason this looks so crazy and complicated is because there's 3 charts on here, okay? And I'm going to just ask you to follow and look for the arrows, right? It'll make it the easiest. To begin, the inner circle, the inner chart, right? This inner chart right here, where you see where it says number 1. Yeah, it says number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right. Well, then you see this extended circle, right? This extended circle. This is chart number 1. Okay. So that's chart number 1. And then you see there's another circle, right? Another ring, and it goes all the way to here. I'm going to try to draw my arrow properly. And I didn't, but that's okay. So that takes us to the second ring, okay? Right? You see the second ring on there? Right. Okay. So then we're going to go to chart number 3. Chart number 3 extends all the way to here. You see that? And so chart number 3, hopefully I can do the magic circle with this one. Yeah. Chart number 3 is that third ring, right? You see it. It's that third ring. This is really tricky. I'm doing this on a freaking trackpad. It's not like it's a mouse. So chart number 3 is right there. All right. So we've got chart number 1, chart number 2, and then chart number 3. Okay. I just wanted to do that so that you understand what you're looking at. So each of those 3 charts is a different date, right? So chart number 1, if you look over here, it says inner ring. That would be chart number 1. All right. And so that's December 29th. That's when Mercury retrograde begins, December 29th, 2022. All right. So that again is this ring here. Yeah. First ring right there, December 29th. So that means the second ring right here, the second ring and going all the way around is the middle ring. And that is January 18th. You see that? January 18th is the middle ring. All right. And then the third ring, right? The third ring, the one we got right here. Yeah, that one. The third ring is down here. I have it as when Mercury clears its shadow zone. That's called the outer ring. Okay. February 6th is when Mercury clears its shadow zone. Okay. Now, in a nutshell, that would tell us right there. I've already given you when the retrograde begins, the middle ring, when the retrograde technically ends, right? And then when Mercury has finally cleared its shadow zone, right? But here's the catch. It's important to know what Mercury is doing, what sign she's in, what kind of conversations she's having, who she's having those conversations with, and where some of the other major things are, especially Mars. And I say that because, well, Mercury rules Gemini, and Mars has been retrograding in the sign of Gemini. Yeah. So when we look on those 3 rings, we see Mars is right there. There you go. There's second Mars, and then there's the third Mars, okay? So what's the difference we see? Well, the first Mars is retrograding. How do I know that? Because it's in red. It's still retrograding here. So when we look at the second Mars, the Mars retrograde is over. Are you following me? The Mars retrograde is over. How do I know that? Because its number is in black. Right. It's in black now. Yeah. Okay. Now, the third Mars, which is the third ring, and the date of the third ring again is February 7th, February 8th. This chart says February 6th at 11:16 p.m. So definitely a difference in the time zone that you're in. Mars is moving direct. You see that? The numbers are in black, and it's at 11:46. Okay. Now it's important to know that Mars's retrograde began at 8 degrees in the sign of Gemini, and it doesn't get out of its own shadow zone until it hits 25 degrees of Gemini. So Mars is technically still in its shadow zone area. Right. So we got to kind of pay attention to it the same way we were with Mercury, which is Mercury doesn't get out of its shadow zone until here, right? Until February. So that would be this Mercury right here. Here's the other Mercury. Mercury's purple with looks like the little like antennas on top of its head, little stick figure with the antennas, right? And then here's the Mercury buried on the inner chart, which is hard to see, right? It's at 24:21 where it begins its retrograde. Okay, so Mercury's retrograde begins with it at 24:21, and that is on December 29th. Okay, now what's interesting to see on Mercury when it begins its retrograde is it's conjunct Venus. Venus is there at 24 degrees as well. So typically Venus is money, our values. Mercury is the news, it's information, it's how I think, it's how I talk, relate, and communicate. It's how I'm tracking information, right? It's the scribe. So it's someone who's taking the information in and then putting it back out there and sharing the information. That's Mercury. Writers, news reporters, and now everybody in the world who's got a smartphone has become a wannabe reporter, a wannabe Mercury in a way, right? Sharing something they've just come across and, oh my God, nobody else knows this. I got to get it to them. Or anyway, sharing bits of information can turn into gossip, which we see how that went rampant, right? For a couple of years there and probably still is because it's Mercury and Mercury rules Gemini and Gemini is the opposite of Sagittarius. And those two signs run on the same line of energy, which is prone to talking and gossiping. It's just is. And the reason is it's not necessarily to be malicious. Mercury likes to have fun. It likes to talk. It likes to use words and it likes to debate back and forth. So it might be like, hey, I heard this piece of information and I think this, so a debate, right? And debate in terms of, well, here's why I think this is important. And then pulling up some, other things to corroborate your perspective, right? So then people can take that, manipulate it, and bend it. Mercury is known to be the trickster, right? Because it likes to have fun. But see, we're finding out that in a really personal way with the internet, because information travels so quick, that can be deadly at times. It can be dangerous. It can be dangerous, right? So we were learning how to be flexible. We were also learning discernment with the information, whether it was credible or not, and how we shared it. And if did we think about it before we pressed the send button, that type of thing, right? So Mercury in Capricorn, let's get to the detail of that part of it. Big business and government, right? Government and business and the values, corporations who have big money, like the too big to fail companies, because it's Venus in Capricorn. It's very serious. Venus is serious here. She's grown up. So is Mercury. It's going to be a little bit more less playful because it's in serious Capricorn energy, right? Mercury stops at 24. So it doesn't quite, some say it's not going to be close enough to be conjunct Pluto because Pluto's at 27 here. I don't know if you can see that. Pluto's at 27 at Capricorn. And this is important because that's conjunct the United States natal Pluto, right? So that actually makes a big deal. Pluto at 27 degrees, the Pluto return. This is big. Yeah. So likely something very big coming down, likely people in power, people of power, constitutional kind of stuff, right? Big businesses and government in the spotlight here, right? So this could be the Fed also with interest rates, and the banking, absolutely. And I say banking because Venus rules Taurus, and that's altogether a big, big deal. Has to do with banking. Like recently, I'm recording this at the very beginning of December. The government's supposedly doing something for the railroads, right? And then a lot of people saying, they could have went further. They could have done more, right? So that's just an example. Okay, that's just an example. What does this mean for you in your life? Capricorn energy is our job. It's our career. It's our ambitions. Capricorn, like I said, is very serious. It's about duty and responsibilities. It's like, okay, I've got to take care of this. This is my thing. I got to carry this. This is mine. I got to it's my job. I need this job. And it has to do with your tangible financial securities, your tangible financial securities. So we associate our career to it and our job because it's like, I got to work to get a house. I got to work to get my car. I got to work to sustain my way of living, whatever that is. And my creature comforts, Venus. Now, Venus and Mercury are like sisters. They get along pretty well, which is interesting because they're conjunct each other here, right? So this is the beginning of the Mercury retrograde. Now, Mars is at 9:31 here in her chart we're looking at. Mars is at 9:31, and this is important because Mars is very close to ending its retrograde, and I know that. I mean, other than the fact that I have an ephemeris and I know it, right? But I know that Mars began its retrograde at 8 degrees in Gemini, and look, it's already at 9 here. So this is at the end of December. At the end of December. So what that means is we know when a planet is when it's going to stop its motion of retrograde and go direct, it gets slower and slower and slower. And so it becomes more pronounced. So it's in Gemini. Mercury rules Gemini. So I'll use an example. Gemini energy, big business. We can think of Twitter. We can think of Tesla because it's automobiles for Tesla, Twitter because it's a social media site, and they're owned by the same guy, Power, right? I've seen a lot of things being thrown around. Is Twitter too big to fail? Should Twitter fail? If Twitter fails, will it help the government? Will it be better for democracy? And this channel isn't for a discussion about whether that is wrong or right or whether that's true or false. It's just simply to say that the sign of Gemini, cars, automobiles, information, communications, social platforms, digital, right? It kind of all falls into that. And it's a quincunx to where Mercury stops retrograding. Mercury's retrograde zone is between 8 and 24 degrees of Capricorn. Mars retrograde zone was between 8 and 25 degrees of Gemini. Gemini and Capricorn are that quincunx energy. So it's an irritation. It's like, it's not a square, but it's like, this isn't going away, right? There's this little irritating thing happening. It's not going away. And it's almost like that insatiable itch. It's irritating the crap out of you. And you're like, I can't reach it, and it drives you nuts. Think about it like that. So it's interesting that they both cover the same territory. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. So yeah, Mars is here at 9:31 going really slow. Right. There's Mars in Gemini, 9:31, going really slow. Okay. And that is on the day that Venus and Mercury at 24 begin their retrograde. Okay. So if Mars is standing still, Mars is powerful. Mars is about taking actions. But if it's in Gemini, Gemini is the way I share information. So it could be the way I'm doing this. How does Elon talk to the public? And again, this isn't a video about Eli. Or is that his name? What's his name? Elon. I'm sorry, Elon Musk. Right? Anyway, it's just using this as an example because it's Gemini. Gemini is the devices. It's your phone and it's Mercury, right? So yeah, the telephone is Mercury, the mail, snail mail, email, all forms of communications, news, commercials, just how we share whatever that is that we're sharing, wherever, however you share it. So it could be talking face to face with your next door neighbors, with your siblings, with your classmates, with your coworkers. This is all Gemini stuff, right? All Gemini stuff. Teachers and students, both. So we hear a lot of crazy crap going on at schools, whether they're in colleges, anybody who's in a learning mode, right? Because it can be teacher, it can be student. That's that's that same line of energy, Gemini and Sagittarius. You know, education down here, grade school, high school, education up here, college, Sagittarius, or extended education of some sort, right? And just crazy things happening, different things in the news about just yeah, just murders and just crazy stuff with kids. And so not all of them are gun violence, although I think most of them have been, but just crazy stuff. So does it mean that? I don't know. Could there possibly be something that would have to do with legislation? I don't think there's anything seriously on the books, you know, but Mars does carry weapons in general. Mars carries weapons. So maybe we'll see. We'll see. You know, all I can do is share with you the keywords. And so when I'm saying the keywords, all it does is present a possibility of the sort of influences that we're going to be under. Okay. And yeah, there's so many of us. So this can look a lot of different ways. All right. Now, seeing that this is a 20-minute video, I'm going to stop this here and do a part 2. So part 1 was just talking about the beginning of the Mercury retrograde, that it was conjunct Venus and Mercury in the sign of Capricorn and what that meant, and that Mars in the sign of Gemini slowing down and standing still, and what that could possibly mean. Remember Mars, Gemini, talking communication, really assertive types of communication, very powerful. People using words possibly to hurt, right? People using this to possibly be malicious, because Mars is known as a malefic planet, right? It can tend to inflame things, right? It tends to just, it's an activator. Mars is an activator. Mars is what they would say a shit starter, can be used when it's not used on a high level. Okay. So we're going to do a part 2. And then, yeah, we'll pick up on the second ring of the chart for the second stage of Mercury's retrograde. Below the video, I'll have all the degrees for those of you who like to pay attention to the degrees in your chart. Again, if you don't know and you want to know, just comment below.